Hi everyone, so today I'm talking about this foundation. It is from Pacifica. It's the Alight Clean Foundation, 100% vegan, cruelty-free, oil-free, anti-shine satin finish, which is an interesting combination of descriptions. Usually those things don't go together, satin finish, anti-shine. And the shade I have in this one is 40 NF Neutral Fair. This is their lightest shade. They have their numbering such that the lightest shade is the highest number, and as you get deeper, the numbers go down. So I did buy this from Ulta, and I've worn this about 3 or 4 times now, and I haven't ever come away feeling super strongly about it, other than I really like the way it looks when it goes on. But in order to keep it from creasing, I tend to powder it down pretty heavily, and then I kind of lose that finish. So today I really tried to keep some of that like dewy, bouncy finish with less powder, so we'll see how it wears. I really don't have any idea how this is going to wear on me today. My skin type right now is dry. I do have a slight bit of oil in my T-zone, and the oil I do have tends to tear through makeup pretty quickly. I tend to get kind of patchy and cakey and separated just everywhere around my mouth. So on my upper lip, under my lips, on my chin. I have some dermatitis in a variety of places, like at the corners of my mouth, underneath my lip, around my nose. So depending on what's going on with those, sometimes those are extremely flaky. I've actually been using Selsun Blue, which is something that works for the seborrheic dermatitis, which is also cradle cap when it's a baby, and dandruff. So it has an active ingredient that actually helps that seborrheic dermatitis, which is what's also on my face. So I've been using a little bit on my face because I was having such massive amounts of flaking at the corner of my mouth, and it has not been flaking. So that's amazing. The other parts of my mouth, around my mouth, like under my lip, still have been peeling, but that little corner had been peeling so badly, and now it's like basically not peeling at all. So that's pretty amazing. So anyway, I've got some issues that I'm dealing with. I'm 39 years old, just had a birthday, had to remember how old I am. As far as other issues I have with makeup, a lot of times it will settle into my pores around this part of my face. And what else? Just crease in my smile lines. My cheeks and my forehead tend to wear makeup really nicely. It's just kind of this area that tends to get messed up, and pretty much everything gets messed up. So before I talk too much about the wear and how I've tested this previously, let's take a look at the swatches. We can see how this color compares to other foundations in my collection. I'm probably going to use these swatches for multiple videos, so FYI. Clinique Even Better in CN 0.5 Shell, a good shade match. Beautyblender Bounce Foundation in 1.10. Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define in F0.2, also a good shade match, good undertone match for me. Too Faced Born This Way in Cloud is a little too light, too cool. Stellar Limitless Foundation in L01. Cover FX Power Play Foundation in N0. It sometimes can look a little too light and cool. Cover FX Natural Finish Foundation in N0. This is a better undertone match for me. It's a little bit more yellow. Cover FX Power Play Concealer in N Fair 1. Cover FX Custom Cover Drops in N Fair 1. They just redid these drops and I ordered them. Price is down, but you only get 1/4 of an ounce, so that's something. And Pacifica Alight Foundation and 40 NF Neutral Fair, which I think looks too light on my face. Alright, since this is oxidized a decent amount, I went ahead and put a fresh swatch next to the dry swatch so we can see. Clinique Even Better in CN 0.5 Shell. Beautyblender Bounce Foundation in 1.10, and here it is fresh, so it dries down a good shade darker than it starts. Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define in F0.2. Too Faced Born This Way in Cloud, Stellar Limitless Foundation in L01, Cover FX Power Play Foundation in N0, Cover FX Natural Finish Foundation in N0, Cover FX Power Play Concealer in N Fair 1, which is my favorite under eye concealer as far as formula goes, and the color is nice as well. Cover FX Custom Cover Drops in N Fair 1, Pacifica Alight Foundation in 40 NF Neutral Fair. This can go a little bit gray on my face, and I would say it is too light for me, and it looks kind of gray, but it's a very lovely finish. Because this one doesn't really dry down and set in the way that some of the matte foundations do, I think it also doesn't really oxidize pretty much at all as far as I could see. I mean, some kind of dewy finishes will oxidize, but I feel like if you have something that doesn't really set down very much, it's less likely to oxidize in the way that a matte finish does. So I feel like this one ends up being quite pale, and as you can see on my face, it is a little bit cooler than what really makes sense on my face and tends to look a little ghostly and gray, especially since I'm doing, you know, I tried to do cooler toned makeup in order to work with the undertone of the foundation a little bit better, but it definitely there's quite a contrast in between the kind of like yellow tones of my neck and my hands, and then my face is a little bit ghostly. If I'm trying to warm up a foundation, I generally go to Hula Light from Benefit. Today, just so we can see if it oxidizes at all throughout the day, I'm just going to keep it as is, so that we'll get an idea what the color does throughout the day, to see if, having not set it completely, if that means that it is going to change throughout the day, or if it's going to continue to be this kind of like quite neutral to cool, slightly gray tone on my face. So I'm gonna set under my eyes and maybe elsewhere with the tiniest, cutest, most luxurious sample I've ever encountered. This is a Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish powder in Fair, the lightest shade, which I feel like added a tiny bit of warmth underneath my eyes, which is good because I'm looking very gray. So I just wanted to show you what a difference that made. I'm not sure what side of the brush I used. Alright, and I am going to use this to set a few places. I do know that this tends to crease. Like, I don't want to take away this really beautiful glossy finish, but I also know it tends to move around if I don't, so I'm just gonna hit a couple spots. So far, I've only worn this about 3 times for setting, but I feel like it works pretty well, somewhat similarly to my Holy Grail NARS Light Reflecting Setting Powder Pressed, but this doesn't have that kind of white cast that the NARS does, and when I'm wearing a foundation that's already a little pale, sometimes if I set it with that NARS powder, it can just take it over the top and look very white and ghostly. So I've been enjoying this so far, so I'm excited to keep testing it. And it's also nice that I can use a brush with that, and hopefully that means I wouldn't go through it as quickly as I do the NARS, which I use with a sponge. So I have tried this with a few primers, the Cover FX Gripping Primer sometimes, depending on the formula. Some more dewy finishes, I found this actually really improves the wear. Things like the L'Oreal True Match in W0.5, ColourPop No Filter foundation. That's the only primer I've ever gotten the ColourPop foundation to actually stick on my face more than like 4 hours. But this one does not seem to work well with the Pacifica foundation. Other primers I've tried have been more that putty style, so the Tatcha Silk Canvas, the e.l.f. putty primer. My consensus has been that this works better without primers on my face. All right, I need to go wake up the baby because I've got stuff that needs to happen today, So I'm gonna finish this at some other time. I don't know when. It might be quite a bit later, and it might be kind of a foundation check-in. So I will be back. Okay, I forgot to zoom in, so let's just look at the foundation real quick. So I finished applying this probably about an hour ago. There's a little creasing, a little of that kind of cracky type thing that happens. This side looks better. I'd say it looks pretty good on my nose. Sometimes foundation will kind of sit weirdly on the pores on that side of my nose, but it looks good. It's sitting nicely on the pores on here. I also have like little scars there. I'd say it looks very nice on these pores here. Having some cakiness of where my concealer and foundation are intermingling here. I don't know if that's the concealer, if that's how I applied things. I'm not really sure what's going on there. And similarly right here, I tried to tap it out a little bit. It's looking good. Looks a little fresher, a little dewier. All right, it is 3:48. Just thought I'd pop in here to show you what it's looking like, just because it's not looking very good around this region where I very often have problems. So it's not been that long, about 5 hours. So it's just looking cakey, heavy, kind of more crackly. This is something I see in a lot of foundations. I didn't set over here, and I do believe some of that has transferred off. It definitely still felt tacky. Even though I did set this, I feel like it is transferring. I'm gonna go ahead and blot because I feel pretty shiny, kind of get into that greasy, oily feeling. Yeah, the foundation is definitely coming off while I'm blotting. All right, so I would say a not insignificant amount of foundation just came off doing that. To be honest, on a regular day, if I had to leave the house again, or if I just had time, I would probably take this off at this point. It's not terrible from a distance, but you know, I like my foundation to look better than this, and this is kind of rough. And it's just gonna get worse, most likely. And so much of it came off. That's kind of disappointing. My guess is that I probably would have less transfer if I used my regular NARS Light Reflecting Setting Powder Pressed, which is my favorite setting powder, and that I generally have pretty good luck with. Whatever combination of skincare or other things, this is just not sitting very well on my face today. And I wouldn't say this is super unusual compared to how it usually wears, so I think I've probably gotten a tiny bit better wear some days than others, and it's one that I don't really feel too excited about continuing to test to find like the perfect skincare prep that I can do to get it to work. Just because the color isn't great for me. It's a little too neutral. I'd probably want to mix it with something. So maybe that's what I'll do next, is just try mixing it with something that's a little too dark. Maybe something like the Maybelline Fit Me Dewy and Smooth in 102, which is, I mean, on the borderline of being usable, but pretty dark. See if I could get that to wear better, and that is, I really enjoy how that wears and how it looks. It's just a little bit dark. So maybe I could lighten it up a little bit with this Pacifica. I'm not sure. I don't know that this is even worth doing another check-in. All right, I think I'm gonna stop here because I don't think any continued wear is really gonna tell us anything. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. I always love hearing from you guys. If you have tried this foundation out, let me know what your skin type is and how it wore on you. I would really love to hear from you. And if anybody this color is a good match for them, that would also be useful if you can tell us what else works well for you. I feel like maybe it looks slightly less gray now, Maybe it oxidized a tiny bit, or maybe it's just there isn't much left on my face and it looks better. I'm not really sure, but I feel like I don't look quite as gray as I did before. I also don't have that light on behind me, so if you want to see more videos from me, please do subscribe. Hit the bell if you want a notification whenever I upload a video. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video today, and I'll see you soon.